What you've done for you is one of the hardest things you could ever have done, because you were defining your self-worth by everything you did and achieved, and you had to let go of that.
I don't ever want to go back to being that person, and I just feel like it was almost kind of worth it in the end.
Part of preparing to become a mother is not just preparing the home and your life and sort of setting things up. It's like, who do I need to be in relationship with myself to be able to create the emotional holding that is most likely to create a happy, healthy, emotionally robust human being?
Welcome to today's episode of In Therapy with me, Alex Howard. And today we have the second part of Lauren's session from Tuesday. Tuesday, Lauren was sharing some of the positive changes that have been happening, and we were exploring themes around what kind of parent she'd like to become. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring some of the challenges that tend to come up at stage 3 of the recovery process from ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Lauren's energy is continuing to come back, but that raises new challenges of lots of invitations to go and see people, wanting to be there for others, helper patterns, achiever patterns coming out. And in this episode, we're really exploring, how do you maintain balance? How do you sort of continue to maintain your connection with yourself and your support of yourself, whilst also being more in the world, being more with other people? So here is Lauren.
What are the temptations now that would allow you to work this issue more so that you're more progressed, let's say? And of course, it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not that you have to be like the most perfectly emotionally present mother that ever existed, but it's like this tendency towards having to do things perfectly and not wanting to say no to other people. Yeah. What are your opportunities to work on that now, do you think?
I think as we come out of lockdown and people starting to do a lot more, got invited to social distancing, which, well, I don't think anything ends up social distancing after the alcohol flows. Thing on Saturday.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I know, because I'm guilty of it. But
you have some evidence towards this.
I have evidence. It's just saying no as a social invite to coming in. I've already had more and more people kind of starting to invite me to things, and I am being like very honest. Well, I'll have to. I've become very good in the last few months, or maybe even 6 months. No, actually, I'll say last few months, because it took a long time for the guilt to go away, of being non-committal, and that I need to continue doing because as I'm getting the energy back, I'm like, oh yeah, it's easy just to go like, oh, that sounds great fun, but I have to remember, like, I still have good days and bad days, and I don't know how I'm going to feel, so I need to be careful not to go back to my yes.
Yeah, well, I think so. It's a penny just dropped in my mind that I wasn't quite getting. Here's the real challenge you have right now. You were at a phase where you said no to everything because you couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Now you're in a phase where you kind of can say yes or no, but you can say no with the excuse of, I may not have the energy to do it. Yeah. So that means that, and that's partly because you don't have the energy to do everything, but even if there is something you kind of could get away with, but actually you just don't fancy it as much, it's just an easier way of sort of framing it. The real challenge you've got is at some point, hopefully not that far in the future, when you've really got the energy, you've got the resilience, you've got the capacity, but either you don't want to do it or you've already overcommitted yourself. Yeah. And what you've experienced in lockdown of more space and more contact with yourself, and noticing how much more emotionally satisfied and alive that you feel, that's starting to diminish, because suddenly introverted Lauren's having to become, idealized self, extroverted Lauren, and you're getting increasingly drained and depleted by that. It's how do you say no, because you actually are honoring yourself, but not because you're fearing a crash, but because actually you need to say, it's in a sense, you're not saying no to them, you're saying yes to you. But how do you do that?
My challenge there is not going to be saying no, it's going to be dealing with the guilt of saying no. and almost saying no in such a creative way that I probably make it really obvious in the end, because I'm trying to alleviate the guilt I feel, and making 10 more promises because I don't want to do that one particular thing. And it's like it's going to be guilt. It's going to be.
So where does that guilt come from? I
feel that I'm letting people down because of how I feel when things like that have been done to me. But it's stupid because I don't actually get upset anymore when people let me down. That was kind of Lauren past, whereas Lauren now is quite relieved actually. When people cancel stuff, I don't feel so rejected. So I need to model my reaction on how I feel now about being let down and not how I used to feel, because I think everybody else feels like how I used to feel, which is probably not true. A lot of people probably feel the same way I do now, which like, I'm quite relieved if I think, oh, actually, I'm not going to make it. I'm really tired. I'm getting better at doing that. Yeah. I used to be so upset if somebody cancelled on me. It would my whole insides would go would just crash. I get this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. I would get really angry. I wasn't a very nice person to cancel on. And most of the time I internalise it, but I'll definitely make it known that I was really disappointed and felt really let down. And it was silly because most of the time those people are cancelling for very good reasons. If they don't feel like coming, they don't feel like coming. Good on them. Nowadays, I look back and commend them. Yeah. I look back at my best friend and go, oh, gosh, you really had the strength to say no to me all those times. Like I never had the strength, the strength to say no to you. I have a habit of when I feel good, I make plans with everyone.
Right.
I have a good couple of days. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I'll book up like every weekend. And then the first weekend comes and I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. And I literally, and I'm like, I'm going to have to cancel the next month's worth of plans, or I'm going to have to kind of like drag myself through it and be really miserable. And, so I am hoping I'm going to be better. And I think lockdown's kind of taught me a bit about balance as well. But with how I don't do things days that I work, I never plan anything else because like work is really important. But I have my day off, and that's the day that before I used to try to squeeze things in. I'll have a drink after work, or maybe I'll do this at lunchtime. Now it's like, if it can't be done on a Wednesday on my day off, then it doesn't get done, Then I'll make it the next Wednesday or the following Wednesday. But I need to be a bit more diligent with that as my energy levels come up. And weekends, like I'll only usually have a few drinks if it's a long weekend, because I know I've got a longer recovery. But I'm not going to be very active on a Sunday, because the sleep on a Sunday is very important for me. So I'm slowly getting there.
Yeah, so I think that's good. And I think part of it is knowing what your capacity to be in balance is. And that, of course, changes. And there's a point where you get your resilience back and you could say yes to everything. But that's also been a pattern I think you've had over the last 10 years, where you'd go for a period where you take on way too much, and then you'd emotionally crash and go for a period of depression, sort of say no to everything. Yeah. And what we want to avoid is those sort of big ups and big downs. That it's being really honest with yourself of how your life needs to be set up in a way which is sustainable. And one of the things, people sometimes say to me, oh my God, how do you fit in so much? I'm like, because I know my limits. I know how many projects that I can take on, that I can sort of make work. I know how much sleep I need. I know how much exercise. I know the limits and the balances, and that changes a certain amount. Like if there's a really intense period, it needs to be wound in and be much softer for a period. But it's having enough self-awareness that you're advocating for yourself, and it's not, if I get asked to do loads of things and I get really busy, it's like, well, no, that's the availability, and I'll do one of that sort of thing each week and one of that. And if there's 5 requests, I choose what I want to do.
Yep.
And it's being disciplined in a sense that you're standing up for yourself. It's sort of like having like a, big shot CEO who's got a really great personal assistant gatekeeper that just gatekeeps the stuff that comes through. You have to do that for yourself. Coming back to that guilt of saying no, or that guilt of feeling like you're letting someone down, do you see how your inner critic comes into that? So that sort of judgment, criticism.
Yeah.
Say a bit about that.
When I think about it, it's actually quite egotistical to think that you're cancelling on someone is really going to affect them
ruin
that badly,
their life.
ruin their life. Yeah, but I will still feel that guilt because I will still think back to how I used to feel. But yeah, the inner critic is, judging me and going, and it's because it's going, well, you couldn't you?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, then am I not doing as much as I can? Am I not putting in 100%?
So it says that you could. What's the push behind the kid? Because you could just go, yeah, I could, but I don't want to. What's the other push that it's got there?
I've always been about trying to make people like me has always been my driving force versus what do I want to do.
So if you don't do what you perceive them to want you to do, they might think you're being selfish or think you're being lazy or think that you think you're better than them or you think you're more important than them, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Selfish, lazy, not a good friend, uncaring. Yeah. So
can you see how this pattern plays out? So like if you imagine, let's say it's the weekend or whatever, and you've overcommitted, you've got a bunch of stuff in the diary. Can you see, as you thought about saying no to some of those things, to say yes to yourself, can you see some of how those patterns would come up and how you might deal with that differently?
Yeah, I'd already be anxious about it, like throughout the whole week. And what I could actually do is just make a decision earlier in the week, because the later you leave things, the worse it gets. But my fear of upsetting someone, or fear of missing out, or fear of letting down, or fear of just not being what I think I want to be, will mean I'll leave it, because I think maybe, I shouldn't, or maybe I'll be fine, or should I not? And then I get to it and I cancel last minute, and of course...
So you play mental tennis for a bunch of days leading up to it, yeah.
And actually I should basically say on the Monday, look, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not feeling great, I don't think I'm going to make it, but if I feel better, I'll let you know. But what I do is I go, or I play passive aggressive, I've been a bit sick, but looking forward to the thing, hoping that they're going to say, don't worry, look, honestly.
You're waiting for them to tell you to listen to your
permission.
Body. Yeah.
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 And then I'll get to the day, and I'll be really angry when I get to the event or the thing, because I'm resentful that I feel like I've been forced to be here. So
it's, in a sense, it's how do you avoid getting, as we touched on earlier, getting overcommitted in the first place, right? So it's almost like at the point of saying yes to stuff, it's like looking at your diary and going, not am I taking on too much, I don't want to get ill, but how does the shape of that week and that month look in a way that's going to help me feel good? Going to mean that I have enough time to be with myself, to enjoy walking the dogs, to have the capacity to do the work I need to do without feeling like I'm sort of squeezed. And it's sort of protecting your diary in a sense, protecting your commitments. It's also the old Lauren of old probably didn't like being on her own. Right. As much, because she didn't like herself as much, whereas the Lauren of now loves being on her own. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there was partly a sense of I've just got to fill everything, because the last thing I want to do is to fill the emptiness and fill the void of being with yourself. Yeah. Whereas actually now, it's sort of like it's not that you're saying no to everyone else. You're saying yes to you because you're diarising yourself. You're diarising the time with yourself to make sure that you can stay connected and you can feel, because then when you do spend time with other people, it's actually quality contact with other people. You need to stand guard at the door of your diary, and you need to, in a sense, remember that just because you can doesn't mean that you should or even that you want to. And less is more at this point, that quality contact is actually far more satisfying than loads of contact where you're running around like a headless chicken. Yeah, for sure. And I think really looking for those inner critic patterns that come in, that I think you've got much more awareness of at this point. And be it using the stop process, be it just telling your inner critic to fuck off and leave you alone, but really, and you might want to, if you haven't already been through it, go into module 9 of resets, which is on the inner critic, and I think that'd be good homework to go through that module and go through the exercises in there. One of the things I find helps is when my mind's doing this dialogue, is to kind of question the dialogue and say okay, this is obviously
something's going on in my head. Like, what is it? What is it about? Like, what's really going on with this dialogue? And trying to get to the bottom of, like, is it because I'm feeling a bit insecure about something, or why am I actually a bit angry? Like, why am I having this, like, this tennis game in my head of feelings and of thoughts and stuff? And usually it's like, oh, nothing really, and it goes away. You know, often it's just me, my mind just keeping itself busy, you know?
Yeah. It's having the awareness to go, I feel a bit elevated in my mood and I feel a bit I'm likely to overcommit. Let's just rein it down, calm it down, settle it, and then go, actually, am I taking on too much? Because the problem is the damage is done at the point you say yes. Because even if you then say no, you've still got to go on a journey to extricate yourself from that. So if you can avoid overcommitting in the first place, then it becomes much easier to work with.
Yeah, and I think I've been able to use being sick really well for that, because I'll say, look, I can't, it's going to depend how I feel. I'll speak to you in the morning, you know, and I don't really commit to things.
But that's your challenge coming up, because you're not going to, in time, have that as your reason.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to find the way to do it, because actually it's just what's right for you, and it's not avoiding getting ill, it's that you're optimizing your emotional, mental and physical well-being by going, I want to live my life in a way that has balance.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I get less, it means I actually get more, because I actually get to enjoy the stuff that I'm doing. Any questions that you've got, or any other questions you've got?
No, I think I'm quite good,
You're doing
considering. Great. I'm pumped full of hormones, and I've only cried once, and then I think about crying and I'll cry again. But I don't know whether that's actually the hormones or whether that's...
It may just be your heart's warming up.
Feelings, which is nice.
Yeah.
You can't, like, you got to have the highs to have the lows, but actually I don't mind the lows, because it means I can have the highs. And actually I haven't really had any lows. I had more lows when I was on the antidepressants than I do now.
Well, it's also not every day is going to be the same. Like, it's normal to have ups and downs in life. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just having a steady foundation that you come back to. And when you're elevated or when you're low, that you can sort of see where you are and you can understand why, to then bring things back to that point of balance. Yeah. Good, well done.
Okay.
And thanks for coming down today as well. It's nice to actually see you in person.
Yeah,
it's
much nicer.
Yeah.
It's also nice to just come down, because I think we had a good start where had quite a good day when we saw you here, and then I had a few rocky months where I was struggling in those sessions a bit, and then now I've kind of come out that a little bit, but there's been so much change.
Yeah, it's
since
amazing.
Then.
It's great. It's great. Good. Thanks,
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of In Therapy. If you haven't already, check out Tuesday's episode, the first part of this session. If you enjoyed the episode, please do like the video. Please do share your reflections, your comments, perhaps a little bit about your own challenges if you're dealing with this stage of your healing journey, be it from chronic illness or even just be it in life. How do you maintain your connection to yourself, but also being there with others? It's a challenge that many people experience. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell. We put out at least one episode a week, and that means that you'll stay in the loop as Lauren's journey continues along with the other participants. And next week, we're going to be catching up with Hannah, and that will be coming out on Tuesday. Thanks for watching. You said in your email that you haven't come out to your whole family about your sexuality. It'd be good to hear about that.
I guess I was thinking maybe that not having come out might be causing some responses.
Whenever we feel that we're hiding the truth of who we are around people, that can have an impact in terms of how we feel. I don't think it's something that you should feel under pressure to do. I think it's more from a place of honoring yourself and self-love and self-care.